Southeast. Let me share my screen here. All right, Victoria, you started recording?
Yes, I did.
Excellent. All right, it's 1 after the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started. We've got an awesome presentation today. Hopefully, Victoria, you can hear me pretty well.
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So again, Paul Zytnik with BuildingPoint Southeast. I'm joined by a couple of guests who I will introduce you to shortly. The agenda for today is we'll spend a just quick second on who is BuildingPoint Southeast. I'll go into a couple introductions of our key speakers. One of our key speakers will discuss creating a successful layout department. So that'll be the bulk of our presentation today. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. We are recording it. Our goal is we'll always have this session. So if you want to view it in the future, or if you want folks on your team or in your company to view it as well, you'll have access to it when you need it. So without further ado, we will jump right in. So BuildingPoint Southeast is a Trimble partner exclusively built to sell Trimble products in the Southeast. Okay, so there's our goal is to make sure our territory, which goes from Georgia all the way to Southern Maryland, is covered with Trimble products, right? And we're very fortunate that we're headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina, with offices in Georgia, multiple offices in Carolinas and Virginia. So if anyone needs Trimble gear for the building side, there's only one company to go to, and that's BuildingPoint Southeast. We're also very fortunate that we get to partner with Trimble as well. So, moving forward, when you deal with BuildingPoint, you really deal with an aligned partnership with Trimble too. So we really operate in two key buckets, and I'll talk about those buckets in a little bit. One of them is hardware, right? The robotic total stations, lasers, et cetera. And the second one is our VDC department. So we do a lot of 3D modeling for clients. So in summary, BuildingPoint Southeast, headquartered here in Charlotte. We're the exclusive Trimble dealer in the Southeast, cover Georgia all the way to Southern Maryland. So most of our clients are in the building space. So general contractors, MEP contractors, concrete, drywall. So really glad to have you guys today and looking forward to having an awesome meeting. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our sister company. So we've only been in business since 2016. Fortunately, our sister company, Duncan Parnell, has been in business for 75 years. They're celebrating their 75th anniversary this year, whereas we predominantly sell to contractors, GCs, MEP contractors for Trimble equipment. They specifically work with what I call horizontal contractors, so surveyors, civil engineers. They are the leader in Trimble sales in the Southeast and Eastern Seaboard for horizontal construction. So what else does Duncan Parnell do? Well, we actually do construction signage as well, as you can see here. We started out as a reprographic print house many years ago, running prints and plans. Duncan Parnell also provides wide format plotters. They rent them, sell them, lease them, and then they have a 3D printing division as well. So for a lot of our manufacturing clients or construction clients that actually need something printed or actually need a 3D printer, Duncan Parnell can provide that too. All right, so let's get into a little bit about one of the buckets I discussed earlier, and that's our hardware bucket. So the bread and butter of our business is our robotic total stations, otherwise known as field layout. So if it's yellow, it's our equipment. Typically folks in the past have used a string line or tape to get layout done. It would take two people. Now, due to the wonderment of technology in Trimble, we actually have a robotic total station that can actually, reduce time spent out in the field, reduction of labor, have more accuracy measurement, and that's what we're really going to base a lot of this conversation on today. And there's a lot of different, there's a lot of different robotic total stations on our menu, so we'll talk about that as well. Our fastest growing product is by far our 3D laser scanner. So on the left side of the screen here is our Trimble X7. This is our newest scanner in our portfolio. Again, fastest growing tool we have, lightweight, registers on site, really impressive. And on the right here is our TX brand of scanners. So these are for a lot larger jobs. Both are designed with the state-of-the-art technology internally and externally, and very easy to use. So BuildingPoint actually does sell these and rent these as well. All right, moving forward. Under the hardware umbrella, you're going to find a product called Trimble CrewSight. So this is a little different flavor than our typical layout tools. So let's say you're a general contractor on a hospital job or a data center, and you need to have some sort of labor tracking or site security. Well, we can actually provide these turnstiles right here. We can actually provide these badges right here that get scanned by a handheld, or these Bluetooth beacons you can put on your hard hat. So all three of these can actually monitor who is inside of a job site, what time did they arrive on the job site, who they work for, and really just keeps everyone centrally located. So this gives us a real good opportunity to connect with a lot of our contractors who want to find a central source of truth for all things labor tracking and site access control. And finally, as I mentioned, we have a bucket that we operate in called VDC services. Typically, you'll find general contractors requiring 3D models, and a lot of their subs may outsource it. They may outsource it to India. They may outsource it to another company, or typically they may not have the time to do the modeling themselves. They may not have the software or the know-how to do it. They may not have the people to do it either. So what we've done is we've teamed with Trimble to do 3D modeling for our clients. So this really goes hand in hand because a lot of our clients are MEP contractors who need laser layouts, who need scanning. Well, on top of that, they need to deliver a 3D model as well. So we've kind of turned into a one-stop shop for hardware and modeling. So, if you need someone to help you with, coordination meetings or modeling or going to a point cloud, BuildingPoint can absolutely deliver. All right, some quick introductions, then we'll jump right into the reason why we're here. So we've got a really great team. I am the general manager. Again, Paul Zytnik. I'm based here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Blaine is also based in Charlotte. He's on our operations team. He's going to handle a lot of the repair for our equipment. Going from my left to right, Chris Dysart is our hardware representative in Georgia. Ryan Pastor does a lot of our 3D modeling. He's based in Raleigh. Scott Stevens, who will actually be quarterbacking this production today, is based in Southwest Virginia. He is our newest employee. Eric Fines does a lot of our training, pre and post sales, and he does a lot of our support as well. So Eric is based in Charlotte. Scott Mayer was actually employee number 1 at BuildingPoint in 2016, based in Charlotte as well, covers North and South Carolina. And Jeff Sosha, who was hired about 18 months ago, is based out of Southern Maryland, covers DC, Maryland, and Virginia for us. We've quickly turned a team of 2 or 3 people to a team of 8 within a matter of 18 months. So at this point, I'd like to introduce a couple folks. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now and let Scott Stevens share his. But I do want to introduce Shawn Spencer, who is our Trimble rep. Shawn's been part of the Trimble family since 2014. Shawn, if you wouldn't mind taking a minute just to kind of give a quick background.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me. Based in Tampa, Florida, I am the Eastern U.S. sales manager for the Building Construction Field Solutions Group, which is to say it's the construction arm of Trimble. That's the world we live in. That's where all of my domain experience comes from. Started off as a land surveyor about Did that for about 10 years, moved into selling for Trimble for another 17 years. And here I sit in front of you guys. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Shawn. So moving forward, Scott Stevens will introduce himself. He'll, as I said, he'll be quarterbacking this presentation for the next 20 minutes. We do have some time set aside for question and answers at the end. If you need anything, by all means, feel free to stop us. Otherwise, we do appreciate your time. Scott, we do see your screen, and you should be good to go if you're not on mute.
All right. Can everybody hear me? We're good to go. Paul, can you hear me?
I do. We hear you loud and clear.
Sounds good. We're just going to go through a quick video at first. I just want to show you guys my background. And then after you guys view this video, I'm going to go through kind of my background, as Shawn and Paul both said.
Scott, I don't know if your sound is muted or not, but we can't hear the sound on the video.
Okay. Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll just skip the video then.
Okay.
All right, so we're just going to jump right into it. That video I was going to show you there was a video of my previous work at Southern Air. My name is Scott Stevens. I'm a Virginia Territory Sales Representative for the state of Virginia. I was born and raised in Lynchburg, Virginia, and I graduated from Lynchburg College with 2 degrees. Spent 2 years at Southern Air as their layout coordinator. So that video I was going to show you was some of my expertise of laying out some stuff from the previous jobs I've had. I was tasked with, when I came to Southern Air, creating a layout department from the ground up, and that was the biggest hurdle I had with Southern Air. They tasked me with that project, and I kind of wanted to do this webinar because I've been there. I know a lot of people in the state of Virginia and as a whole in the country don't know where to begin for layout departments, and that was my main reason for kind of wanting to do this webinar, was to definitely show you guys my experience and my fails and my successes and how I did those for the future. So that's the reason why I'm here, and I want to thank you all for joining, and let's get into it. This webinar will cover deciding the right fit for your team. What skills do they need? We're also going to cover a couple of things on researching and doing your homework. We also want to talk about how we were going to establish our control of our site. And we also want to specialize in layout. How do we specialize in layout that best fits your company and its goals? So the first thing I want to talk about is who do we want for our layout team? This could be a person, this could be a team. We definitely want to have a dedicated layout individual or team. We don't want to spend a lot of money on a technology and not have a dedicated person. You wouldn't spend $40,000 on a dozer to go out and work in your backyard. You definitely want to have this person to learn to physically use this machine every single day and every single need, because if not, you're definitely going to not have a lot of money used. This person has to be eager to learn. What I mean by that is that they want to be able to be connected as a team. They want to be eager to learn. They can't just give up on it after a couple of days. They have to be able to want to learn technology, because it takes time. You can't pick it up in a couple of days. You might think you can, but until you're on the job site, you're never going to really know. They have to know their way around their drawings. One of the biggest things that I've had issues with was people who wanted to jump into layout as a whole, not knowing the way around drawings. So they don't know what they're laying out, whether it be lights or underground or HVAC or different, some similar as that aspect. So they definitely have to understand their way around a drawing to know where they are. Another big thing is job site safety. They have to have some knowledge of it. Trimble operators are usually sometimes the first ones that go up there. They have rebar flying around. They're on decks that are pre-poured. They have to realize that safety is the #1 issue when we're out on the job site. So if they don't have any kind of job safety training, or that aspect of it, they definitely will fail at it because they will get yelled at very quickly. I know in my experience, I was been on job sites where I've been having to lay out with a prison pole with the harness on because I was the first one up there without having the guardrails up. So you definitely want to have a person who's been on the job site before and has some knowledge of it. Um, Basic understanding of computers. This is kind of a gray area. We can learn about computers. People can teach them, but there's a certain aspect of an individual who has to know that, you know, we're using a computer in general. Our controller is the computer, so we have to understand how to be able to update it, keep it rolling, cut it on and off, and make sure that it's working properly because it is a tool we're going to be using every single day.
Hey,
Another big, yep,
Scott, this is Paul.
yep.
Can you also talk about not just a basic understanding of a computer or knowing the way around drawings, but actually understanding, you know, their way around a construction site, right? So actually knowing the, you know, how to put together a building, or knowing the, you know, the ins and outs of construction and what kind of experience they have to have in relation to construction.
Yeah, so on the aspect what Paul was mentioning is having some aspect of being on the job site of construction. You know, you don't want to put somebody out there who's fresh, who's never been on a job site before. You have to definitely want to break them in. Typically, what we did in my company or the company I used to work for is if they wanted to come work with me, we would send them out on the job site to actually do some work for a different sub for 2 weeks to see how things are, to see what the life of the construction worker really is. Because, like I said before, it's definitely a different kind of aspect if you come from it from the field, or excuse me, from the office to the field. So you definitely want to have that culture aspect down to a pat.
Yeah, I tell you, in the 15 years of experience I've had selling equipment to customers out in the field, what tends to work best is to identify those individuals or several team members to get them extremely focused in on how to do layout. What I tell you, what doesn't work well in general is you get, you know, 5, 6 guys trained on how to use the gear, and then, you know, Bob takes it for the first project, and then Bill doesn't get it to see it for, you know, 2 months, and then Frank on the other end, he hasn't seen it in 6 months, and it tends to fail at that level, right? So having 2 or 3 fully dedicated people on the team that their job is to go project to project with the robot, go do layout. That's their day in and day out job, right? Now on the back end, they're still a fitter, they're still a tenor, right? There's still an electrician on the back end when they're not doing, you know, actual layout. You know, they're installing sleeves and they're putting in stub ups and they're, you know, jumping in the trenches. So it's not to say that they, you know, they're removed from the role, but their main focus, where you're going to get the most ROI, you know, when you spend that kind of money on a robot, is to have somebody fully dedicated. Now, obviously, the downside with having somebody fully dedicated is, you know, that guy gets hit by a bus. We need to have a backup plan, right? So that's why I'm saying 2 or 3 guys. You build a team of people that their focus is layout. Their focus is taking what the guys in the office have designed in their head or in their mind or inside of CAD, and then pushing that out to the field. And then the guys out in the field are the ones that are, you know, they're going to take over the project on the outside and have it laid out exactly the way it was designed and intended.
So we're going to go to the next topic we have here. Um, Doing your homework on the job site is a major key to what I've done in the past from layout perspective. The biggest portion of doing your homework, I believe, is called scouting. What is scouting? Scouting is going to the job site and doing your actual homework, seeing what's there, finding your control. What kind of issues do we have? Is it even worth it for you to go out by then? Is there a line of sight? There's been a job where I've been on at Virginia Tech CID, which is one of the dorms I was working for at Southern Air. The guys sent me out there and they already had their frames up and they wanted me to lay lights out. So those are the kind of things that you want to go out to and scout. You definitely want to have your foot traffic down to a minimum. You definitely want to make sure that the site area is clean. We all know construction sites, they're never the cleanest as they could be. There's always things in around, whether it be junk, scrap metal, or trash cans, or debris piles or drywall guys throwing up some drywall, you definitely want to make sure that it's cleared out and you have your full area of potential there for you to work out on. And this means coming out a couple days beforehand and making sure that you have the right technique and tools to use to lay out properly. Finding your control, finding out if the control actually is there or if it actually is right. So you definitely want to go out there a couple of days before or even up to a week before to make sure that the job site is clear and ready to go for you. You don't want to drive all the way a couple hours to a job site if you are traveling and show up there one day and people are in the way or there's a huge lift in the way or something that's there that they can't be moved. I know a lot of places like to hang ductwork. They put the ductwork in spots where you have to lay out. I've had that happen before a lot where the lay down yard would be in the place where I have to lay out. So you definitely want to make sure you have your homework done when it comes to that from scouting.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues, on every project that a lot of people run into that I get calls on almost daily is it revolves around control. And one of the toughest things to identify is a control network that matches your CAD file. You need to make sure that you have the data so that you can go out and do the layout in the field, right? The worst thing to do is to show up on a job site and it's a wide open field and you're getting ready to do underground and there is no control, right? You're not going to be able to do the layout that day. But in general, right, a clean, wide open site, when he's saying doing your homework, there's truth in that. You need to make sure that you're ready to go. Otherwise, you're wasting your time out in the field. And there's you spend that kind of money on a robot. There's no worse feeling than not being fully prepared, before you go out to the field.
Exactly.
The other thing I wanted to make note of, when you get out to the field and you're the electrician, go talk to the GC, go talk to the plumbing guys, go talk to the concrete guys, find out what they're using for control, right? Get on the same coordinate system as them. When they're setting control, you know about it. When you're setting control, they know about it. The more people that you have on your team, so to speak, out in the field, doing layout off the same control, the better off you're going to be, right? Just in general down the road. The more aligned everybody's going to be, the more things that fit, right? It's what's going to end up happening.
And that's right. That's part of that whole scouting thing. You got to make sure the day before, a couple days before, that control is actually there, the one you're actually going to be working on. But we'll go into control on the next slide a little bit more deeper. I know we have some more aspects that we want to talk about. But the next point I have on here is, you want to have the GC or the superintendent on speed dial. What I mean by that, I mean, if you have a slotted time when you are sent out there to do your work, make sure you have that time to actually do the work. Previous jobs I've been on, I've actually had a couple hours to go out there and work. They say, Scott, the floor is yours, take over. Okay, I get out there and start working, and then I start seeing rebar flying over my head, or the rebar guys are starting to get in front of me and knock it over my machine or kicking it and knocking it out of level. So you definitely want to make sure to step up and tell a GC, look, this is my time. We gave you your time to do your work. Now it's my time to do my work. So you definitely want to make sure that you take control of that and do that aspect at the time allowed. And that homework part of it allows you to do that. Being prepared for your slotted time, because they really don't care about a machine out there on the job site. They want to get their job site done. There's no way for them to stop working, so they're going to kind of be working around you. So definitely make sure you're one-on-one with the GC or the superintendent. Make sure they have your back. Another big thing about that aspect of it is have trust in your layout. It's an input-output machine. If you put good stuff into the technology that we have, you're going to have a good output. If you trust your control lines, they should work. What I mean by this is when I was working on a job that also in Virginia Tech, I actually laid out some wall penetrations for a GC that was going into a wall that was about to be precast through concrete. I laid them out. A couple minutes later, the GC comes to me and says, "Hey, Scott, look, we believe your hole penetrations are a little lower." Me being myself and knowing that I trusted my work and I knew my control was right, I said, "No, I don't think that it's wrong. We should definitely go double check it. The elevation I had was right." So he goes up and checks it and says, well, Scott, you were right. We were wrong. And I had trust in my work there. Another thing I told him when I was there was like, also your wall that you're about to pour is 14 foot short. They measured it and double checked it, and they were really astounded, really surprised at the fact that I was able to tell them by this piece of machine. So when I mean trust, that's what I mean. You have to have trust in yourself when you're out there on the job site. Have trust in what you're doing. If you know that your control lines are good, have trust in what you actually are doing. And I know Shawn has something to say about that, because I was actually the one who called him on those wall penetrations to ask him how to would be the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's with with all of the gear and the advancements that we make in technology, at Trimble, and the amount of things that we're cramming into the software to allow you to be able to do, all these different, types of activities, whether it's wall penetrations or running with elevations or, doubling angles or doing surfaces. We're adding scanning modules. Down the road, we're going to add, like spot the dog, into the software. When we add all this different new tech and allow you to be more productive in the field, I want you all to know that you're more than welcome to call the guys at Trimble. You're more than welcome to call, any of the BuildingPoint team to ask questions. If you have some ideas or concerns on how to do something, chances are with all of our domain experience, we've done it before, right? We've been in the same position that some of the challenges or tasks that lay ahead of you, we've been there, and we're happy to help and jump on calls. I can't tell you how many times I've done FaceTime videos with customers, whether they're in Massachusetts, Nebraska, Virginia, Georgia. We do it all the time. We want to make sure that you're productive and that you're confident in your layout and your ability, to be able to get the job completed.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. That's one thing I did a lot when I was there. I definitely called Trimble a lot to make sure I had my stuff down, because you have to learn these things from someone, and they teach you. We do a very good job of calling or having phone calls being called to us, and answering those calls and helping you guys out on that aspect. So thank you for that. One of the biggest things we want to talk about during this webinar is establishing control of your site. If you don't have good control, you're going to fail. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about that. What one good thing about what Shawn was speaking about earlier was having a dedicated control for all trades. And what I mean by this, everybody who's out on the job site needs to have the same control. It's just the way it has to be. From my experience out there, if you don't have that, your drywall guys are going to be off, your framer guys are going to be off, your MEP guys are going to be off, electricians, your plumbers. If you have to go out and lay hole penetrations inside of a 4-foot-inch frame and the drywall guys are using the wrong control, you're going to be off. So it's going to be a pointing game. There's been every single job site I've been on when I was laying out, there's been issues with control. So I would suggest to you, if you can get into the GC or the pre-coordination meetings, I would suggest to push to have a good, successful Trimble department, a dedicated control for all trades, whether it be for MEP, it's a little different for us. We're inside of a building, so we're pulling from control lines. But when it comes to concrete guys, they have surveyor marks. So it's a little bit easier for them because the surveyor guys come out and actually lay out survey marks for them. As you can see one here I found laying around Lynchburg one day. But when it comes to MEP trades, you definitely want to make sure that every trade that is out there who is pulling control should have a dedicated control line. A GC should establish that control.
Yeah, and one of the things with control gets tricky, throughout the life of a project. Obviously, when you start on a project, usually the only control that's available are the guys that are, pushing dirt, or the surveyor's control, which is coming off of property corners. And oftentimes at the beginning of a project, that's great. That's all you have, and everybody tends to be on the same control system. But it's where it gets a little tricky and becomes somewhat difficult is once you get inside the building, right? So if you're set up and you're on the, I don't know, let's say you're on the 20th story of a building, and the control that's given to you is down on the ground floor, right? But the drywall guy is pulling off of a control line and the core wall, you're not going to match. And you really need to make sure that you're watching and paying attention to what you're laying out versus what other people are laying out. And you need to constantly double check yourself. You just want to make sure that the control and the things that you're starting from match what other people are using. If not, you need to raise the flag immediately, right? The way I always like to talk about, control, especially when you're in a building, I know not all buildings are, 40 stories tall, but, if you go to, if you go do layout in Miami and you're 40 stories high, there's no way you're going to shoot control on the ground. The building's moving, 3 or 4 inches. And if you're shoot control on the ground and then try and, transfer it onto a building, it never works. Nothing matches. So, I think of it as a ship. When you're doing layout on your ship, on a cruise ship, let's say, you're not going to shoot control back to back to dry land. That ship is moving around as it's floating there. So you want to make sure that at that stage, the control you're using is the same control everybody else is using, but it's inside the building. Oftentimes that's it's going to give you a higher degree of confidence, for starters. Two, it's going to match everybody else that's out there. It's going to match the electrical guys. It's going to match the drywall guys. And then everything starts falling into place. These guys build models, right? You're talking about, this giant BIM. It's got everything completely put together, ready to go. They spend hours and hours and hours and days on this stuff. They have meetings over it. At the end of the day, we want to make sure everything that we lay out goes into the same spot. And if not everybody's using the same control, that's where things start to fail. And that's, like Scott said earlier, that's where the finger pointing starts. So,
yeah, that old adage of measure twice, cut once still plays into effect of control. You definitely want to make sure that you're on the right spot on the job site, because it could definitely bite you in the butt, because that happened to me a lot. When Shawn was talking about a coordinated model, this is my next topic of a 0-0 origin. A lot of companies out there don't have coordinated models, or they're about to start getting them. They sub it out. When you first start, get your coordinated models, you definitely want to make sure that everybody's on the same origin. What do I mean by that? There's a coordinate system that people use in these models, whether it be northings or eastings for surveying, or XYZ for our guys in construction and layout. You definitely want to make sure that we all trades are on the same 0-0-0. So if we ask the concrete guys, hey, can we use y'all's survey points? If they give them to you and you're not on the same origin of aspect of it, they're going to be wrong in your job site, and then you're going to be pointing the finger at them. So when it comes to having that origin, it's key, whether it be 0-0-0 or 500, 500, 500. You definitely want to actually have that centralized origin, because same thing as control. If we don't have it centralized between all trades, we're going to fail, and then we're going to have issues. Another thing about that is double checking your accuracy. Control moves. Control can be kicked over. Control can be wiped off the floor. You have when you're out on the job site, you have lines all over the floor. You have to double check that those lines are accurate, or if you're going to use them, or make sure your lines are still there. After a couple of weeks of not laying out on a job site, and you have your control on the ground and with markers, it's going to be kicked up, it's going to be moved, it's going to be set over. So when you reset that control, you have to make sure that it is right, because if you are wrong, all of this stuff that you laid out the week before is going to be wrong also. You're going to be wrong from that. So double checking it, like I said before, is a big aspect of control. If you don't double check what you have, then you're going to fail. Like I said before about the input output machine of Trimble, it's an input output. So if you put in good stuff, you're going to get good stuff out of it. If you put in bad stuff, you're going to get bad stuff out of it. So that accuracy aspect of checking it is definitely a key to that. And also, as I said before, you have to trust yourself. If you know that you got the right information and you double checked it and triple checked it, and you're out there laying out and somebody questions you, trust in yourself. You have to have the confidence to go out and say, look, I'm doing this. I know that I have the right coordinates. I have the right control. Challenge them, talk to them, ask them, where am I wrong? Let's measure it. I have the tablet right here. We can do some hard measurements off the wall right here and see. There's been plenty of times I've been out on the job site where I've had to take the tablet out and actually do some hard measurements to prove to Mr. Whoever that I was right and they were wrong. And most of the time I was right and they were wrong. Some people are just stuck in their ways and don't trust in technology, but I assure you that this technology is there to help you. And if you put the right information in it and trust it, you will get the good output of it. There's some steps to protect your control. Some of the steps that I've learned over the years. If you're outside and you're doing some reference points from some survey points and you need to do some control um, reference points from an actual control line that you got from a surveyor, I would suggest this would be for your concrete contractors or anybody who's doing site work. I would suggest definitely putting a metal pin in the ground and doing some flags around like this with some tape on it. Oh, excuse me, some markers on the end of it, and making sure that people can see it because they do get run over. I've been on many a job sites where my control lines have been either kicked over, stepped over, pulled out of the ground. You definitely want to have your backup options. Another thing, if we're for MEP contractors, when we're on the job site, you're putting control lines on the ground, whether it be finished concrete or unfinished concrete. I like to take some clear epoxy spray, paint spray. You get it from anywhere. Most job sites have it. Mark your control lines or your control marker on the ground and spray it with that epoxy over top of it. As long as you ask the GC if it's okay to spray it. If it's not an unfinished floor, it's okay. But if it's a finished floor, you might want to use some tape. I used tape in the uh, previous times I've been out in the field, and that works also. So you definitely want to take steps to protect your control. And Shawn can agree with you on this, with me on this about control is like he said before, it's key. It's the only thing that is going to stop you from having a bad day for layout. If your control is wrong, then you're going to be wrong.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Let me, Shawn, let me ask you this. We're kind of wrapping up this presentation. You know, if we know we need layout, we have the folks to do it. We had the business to do it. How do you convince some of the decision makers, right, or the owners of the company, or the director of operations that this is going to be beneficial and that there's a return on investment? What kind of conversation would you typically have with somebody in that role?
Yeah, I tell you, a lot of it is having an open, honest conversation with them, and sometimes they're hard questions. But some of the questions would be on your last project. Have you used anybody to do layout for you? Did you have to hire a surveyor to do the layout? Did you have the electrician do your layout for you, and maybe you're the plumber? Some of those questions that stuff costs money, right? To hire somebody to come in, third party. They take on that responsibility. They take on all the risk to do all your layout, and so that stuff does cost money, right? So that's step one. That's one question to ask, and it helps get them the ball turning of how much they actually spent versus how much it would cost to physically buy a robot. Now that's not the only reason, obviously. Another good question is, what was the last, on your last project, did everything go right? Did you have any rework? Did you have anything that didn't work? Did you miss some sleeves? Did you miss some, some holes? Did you miss some stub ups? Was anything out of the wall? And I promise you, at some level during that project, something happened, right? That costs money. So some of those things is now that you can start to take those things in-house, you're going to save money just on the stuff that you don't have to do anymore, right? Now, aside from that, you can ask them different types of questions. Questions like, how many guys does it take to do layout on a deck, right? Or how many people are you using? Are you using 3 or 4 guys? Are you using a tape measure, a string line? Whatever it may be. How repeatable is that? If you're using a robot, and I know we've beaten this like a dead horse, but when you use a robot, you're increasing your productivity, tenfold. We're talking about a 100% increase in productivity, with less people. And one of the things that is probably one of the biggest issues, aside from challenges you may have with having somebody else do the layout, it's simply there's just not enough people. There's just not enough people in the construction trade industry that are willing to come out and do, whether it's layout or, laborers, any of that stuff. There's not enough people. And the only way for a company to be able to provide layout on time and accurate and maintain some level of productivity because of the time frames and the escalated time frame that everybody wants to pour in these days, the only way to be able to achieve that is through a robotic total station. We're not taking work away from anybody, right? We're adding productivity because there's nobody else there to take the spot. Is kind of really what it comes down to. So, you know, it's a good question, Paul, and there's not, you know, one easy answer to say that. And I don't mean that to sound too salesy, but it's an honest question that people can have with their owners to ask, like, hey, you know, fill in these blanks for me, right? Does that cost you money? The answer is yes. Well, here's some technology you may want to consider using, you know, down the road or on the very next project.
And I can give you some real world examples about that. Being at the company I was before, you know, for the first 6 months I was there, I was able to save the company $150,000 just in manpower alone. So what you're doing is you're sitting out there, somebody like myself, who is getting paid less than your typical foreman who's getting paid in the 30s and $40 an hour. Those guys who are the ones traditionally doing the layout with the line and tape, you got two guys out there. You can go send them off to do what they actually have to do, what they're trained to do, to pull conduit. They have to go out there and fix the um, electrical room, stuff like that. And while they're doing that, I can go out there and I can lay out for them. And you're saving your manpower just alone from having your experienced guys doing the work they should be doing and having a robot and a person as or people as myself out there and enjoying laying out for them and making sure we're all in a harmonic spot. That kind of leads into the last slide I have about today's webinar is specializing and lay out the best fit your company's goals. We were talking about return on investment earlier. We're spending this money on this robot. How can we get our return of investment back? One of the biggest things that I see to do that is focusing on the aspects of our company that might need help or can speed up faster. So underground, I've done a lot of underground in the past. If you can prefab. If you can prefab these underground runs, you can actually save a ton of money by depositing them into the ground based off of those locations from our layout. There's one thing you could think about specializing in layout that fits your goals. What do you, as a company, what are you trying to accomplish and where do you lack? So whether it be hangars, whether it be trapeze hangers, whether it be underground, whether it be conduit stub ups, wall penetrations. So you have to think to yourself as a company, where can we do better? Where can we save money? Where are we lacking at in layout? And if you put the robot where you are lacking in those aspects, I guarantee you will save lots of time and money. Also, according to that, what I was talking about before is how you lay out to save money. What I just said before is true to that aspect. How do you lay out to save money? Going out there and having somebody who's getting paid a little bit lower to do layout versus somebody who does layout by hand and tape, takes a week and does the layout by hand. You know, there's been times where I've laid out on the job site and the electrician or the foreman comes to me and says, "Man, you're done already? You just laid out 150 points in an hour? That would have taken us 2 weeks to do." So that is the money aspect of it. You think about that, two guys, electricians getting paid good money, 2 weeks to lay out something I just laid out in an hour. So that's how you save money. You want to have that guy come to you and say, "Look, man, you just saved us so much time. This thing is awesome. Where can I buy one?" Or something like that. Another thing is dedicate yourself to the process. Each standard you have in your company, set a standard for it. What I mean by that, so if you're a multi-standard company with electrical piping and HVAC, you want to have a standard for each for layout. So what is it? So what do I mean by that? Laying out wise, when you lay out on the ground, you want to make sure you have a standard, writing down exactly what they are, different colors. So when I was on the job site laying out for HVAC, I did it in green. I did it in blue. When I was on the ground for doing electrical stuff, I did it in white. So you have to understand that there's going to be a lot of stuff on the ground. And if you keep a standard of your layout marks on the ground to know that they're yours, it's going to save you some time and money because of having to find them. You know, it looks like graffiti on the job site grounds when you're out there on some of these job sites. And if you don't, you know, take a standard to know what's yours and what's not yours, you are going to fail. And I know Shawn has seen this before. He's been on a lot of job sites and he knows that having this standard for each trade, whether it be HVAC, piping, or prefab, is a good thing for a company.
It is. You know, I mean, you know, one of the toughest things, you know, you walk onto a new site or you're on a brand new deck, and you've got every trade out there trying to stick their points on the ground or in the dirt. and it gets a little crazy, right? And you know, as long as your company has come up with a set of standards ahead of time, and these are things that you need to have a conversation with, you know, with the VDC manager and your layout guy and the project super, right? Maybe in one situation, it's best just to have the layout crew just banging out as many points as they possibly can, and they're just writing a number behind them, right? Then you have somebody else coming right behind them with a PDF drawing or an iPad that's got all the data and the information in it, and they can look on that iPad and they go, okay, here's point 2. I know that's a half-inch hanger. Okay, that's point 55. Oh, that's a, you know, that's a 6-inch sleeve, right? And so they're coming in right behind you, but you have to have these things put together ahead of time, right? And so, you know, the VDC team and department needs to have the things on the, you know, on the right layers, need to have the right attributes associated with them, so that it makes sense for the guy that goes out in the field. Or if you're doing prefab, you know, you have that communication between the shop and the field layout guy, so that the field layout guy knows exactly what the shop is putting together. So when he goes out to the field, he only has to lay out 4 points, and then they can bring that entire prefabbed piece of equipment in and literally drop it in the hole, or you know, plug it into the ceiling. So it reduces the amount of layout, increases the productivity, you know, whether you're doing prefab, but it's having those meetings between the VDC team, your project superintendent, and your field layout team that's going to give you the best chance at success.
So that wraps up the portion of me talking. We just want to thank everybody for joining. We are going now to take about 10 minutes for some questions. So feel free to jump on, ask questions away to either myself, Paul, or Shawn. We can answer them as best as we can.
This is Davis Meeks with CDM Smith. I've got a quick question.
Okay.
You know, you were talking about, you know, whenever you have been questioned in the field, you were able to go and back check and find a resolution. Say that you do provide say that you're a GC and you provide layout, and your subcontractor comes and checks and says, I don't think this is right. How do you typically find resolution in who has the correct layout?
So what we would do in the past, Trimble has graciously provided us with a good tool on the aspect of reports. So at the end of the day, if I go and lay out 100 points, I'm going to have a report at the very end that tells you your layout deviation. Those those reports are good to show to people. In the past, I've had issues where people have come to me and said your layout points are wrong. What I would do is I would actually physically go out with them and actually take the hard drawings, go out and show them that where's it off? How far are we off? Are we within, you know, half an inch, or are we off 2 foot? And that plays a big role in it. If you're off 2 foot, something's seriously wrong. But if you're off, you know, half an inch to a quarter of an inch, it could be just being picky, or they could be really, you know, it could be an issue where you have to be tight because of it being into a frame. So those are reports. If you go to the very end each day and print those reports out and save them, and somebody says, hey, look, Scott, you went out and laid out 150 points on the deck last Thursday. Let's see your layout deviations. If we think some of these are wrong, you show them that deviation report, and it usually can cover your butt.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would also add to that. It depends on the owner, right? Who owns the problem ultimately, right? If it's the GC that owns the problem ultimately, you know, I tend to feel that as long as they're having, whether it's weekly or monthly meetings about control, about what's being used for control, and if there's any deviation from that, they need to be able to bring it up right away. And as a GC, you need to be able to point to and maintain that control, so that one, it's consistent across all the groups, and it is a 100% focus of the GC to make sure and ensure that the teams that are using the control to do layout have to be on that system. There is no other system, right? What can't happen is you have all of a sudden a drywall guy or an electrician come in and they just start like, oh, wow, this is the inside of the, whatever, it's a core wall or, something like that. And they're going to use that for control. That can't happen. So it's consistent meetings and making sure that everybody is on the same page. A lot of times those problems start to fade away, but then you have to really start to drill down deep, right? You got to figure out, okay, what area are we having a problem in, or is this problem arising, and then fall back and shoot that control. And worst case scenario, a lot of times use a scanner, use a 3D laser scanner to go out and literally scan exactly what you got. And then now let's start comparing that to the model and see where things need to change, or try and catch it ahead of time. If you're using a scanner on a project, it allows you to scan in 3 or 4 minutes, like a complete room or bigger, to be able to compare against the drawing. You should be able to start to catch problems before it really becomes an issue. Even if you're just scanning the sleeves before you guys pour concrete, it's little things like that that allow you to snag a problem before it's going to cost you an absolute ton of money.
Right.
That's a good question. Anybody else have any other questions we could answer?
There's a question in the chat.
Okay.
All right, so how do we get the VDC and the layout department on the same page? That is a great question.
That is the age-old question.
Yeah, no. So part of it starts with having meetings, being able to show the VDC department, the BIM department, being able to show them exactly what they have, what they've sent you, what it looks like in the field, versus what they're seeing in their CAD file. Oftentimes it is two different things. There are some relatively inexpensive softwares that you could use to make sure that you're aligned. One of them is you could literally put the tablet software that you're using in the field to do layout. You could put it on their laptop or their computer, so that they can send the data straight to that. Make sure it works. Make sure it's orientated to the right, whether it's plant north or GNSS or GPS north or just grid north. That's a quick, easy way to ensure that the data going out to the field is good to go. Another path is through Trimble Connect. With Trimble Connect, you can pass the data from office to field, but then you can see it before it actually gets to the tablet to make sure that it's well. Scale is tough. We'd almost have to see the project, but oftentimes, if they're designing in inches, and you're out in the field and you're not necessarily in inches, you're in feet and inches. There could be a scale factor problem of usually it's pretty simple. Usually it's like 12, something like that, where either you multiply the CAD file by 12, or you multiply it by what the reciprocal, the 0.08. Northings and eastings is the same as YX, right? So north is the same as Y, X is the same as sorry, did I say that right? North is the same as Y, east is the same as X. So X and Y, northing and easting, are interchangeable as long as you identify which one is which, depending on the data that's coming to you. That might be an easier question actually handled on a kind of one-off basis. So if it's something we could call you about, that would be fine too. You're welcome to call us and chat through that.
Yep. Somebody else have another question?
Looks like that's it. We've
Alrighty.
actually hit the bottom of the hour, so perfect time to wrap up. Shawn, thank you for your time. Scott, yours as well. And to all those who attended, we really appreciate it. We'll have it recorded for you guys. Feel free to request it. And if you need anything, I hope you guys give us a shout. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks.
Thank
guys.
you.
Take care.